Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Good morning and welcome to a Thursday edition of the program. It's Podup with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. We're going to have our college football analyst, Brent Beaird, join us here momentarily. Brent and I are taped. Then we'll turn it over to a live program with Hitt rounding us up. So, NCAA tournament, Sweet 16 kicks off tonight. A lot of games. You got Michigan State, Kansas State, Arkansas, Connecticut, FAU, Tennessee, Gonzaga, UCLA. Let's go to the Titan More Highline. We know this guy. His bracket has probably been busted. Brent Beaird, our college football analyst. Good morning, Brent. How you doing, bud?
Yeah, it has been for a while, Shane. Good morning. Good to be with you. But we say this a lot, but this is a very undervalued time of year. You've got the NIT, you've got the NCAA, you've got spring practice. So I tell you, for what we do, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a great time. You got the World Golf Championship going on right now in Austin, Texas. In a couple of weeks, we'll have the Masters. So a lot of sports going on right now. Brent, let's go ahead and jump into college football. Obviously, the SEC, everybody, I believe, has started spring practice. Some are finishing up. Just from a general standpoint, before we jump around the league, everyone has started, correct?
Yes. What we've got is that everyone has started. Now, Missouri is the only one that actually, if you can believe this, they had their spring game last week, and it was so cold that they basically had to cancel the game, and the players just went inside.
Wow.
So now what they've done is they've actually got they're going to work a few days after, which is probably a pretty good idea for some of these teams that do that, where they will go in and they'll work 2 or 3 days, even after the spring game, to try to clean some things up. So that basically is what Missouri has done, so that they are right now the only ones who are done.
I gotcha. Okay, so Brent, first of all, before we jump into going around the SEC, just want to give our thoughts and prayers out to former Gator and current Dartmouth head football coach Buddy Stevens. Was in a very, very serious biking accident over in St. Augustine. He has a place over there. They spent a lot of time, and just sending our thoughts and prayers out to Buddy. Great man, done wonderful things at Dartmouth, and was a very good football coach for the Gators. Brent, let's start with Alabama. The Alabama Crimson Tide are in practice. What can you tell us on what's going there? I mean, obviously they got a new coordinator on offense and defense.
They do, and they are adjusting. I mean, they just started, frankly, this week, and several teams just started this week. So that's kind of the fun of spring. No one ever starts at the same time. So what's come out of Alabama? Dallas Turner, Deontay Lawson, 2 defensive players are out for the spring because of injuries, but they will be on the mend and that will be okay. With that, they give some other guys like Kendrick Blackshear, Jahad Campbell, Sean Murphy a chance to step in. Remember, Bama also got the Georgia transfer, Tresmean Marshall, and JUCO transfer Justin Jefferson to go along with that too. I got a little amused at Nick Saban. He was talking about some of the roles for the staff. Travarius Robinson, for instance, is coaching the entire secondary. And then Saban says, and then you've got me walking around, and I don't know what exactly I contribute, but I'll be out there walking around doing something they're still trying to find something that I can do. So I thought that was rather amusing. And again, I mentioned Tremese Marshall, the Georgia transfer. C.J. Dipre, the tight end from Maryland, is also there. So, and probably the most unfortunate thing, they had a freshman defensive back, Tony Mitchell, arrested on marijuana possession. He had a lot of marijuana, scales, loaded handgun, and a lot of cash in the car. So I'm not, we don't know that's what the alleged report is, but that certainly is not good for him. So, but beyond that, they are, they're in the league and they're doing okay.
I saw some quotes of what Saban said about the kid that was suspended. And, a lot of people on Twitter said he was taking shots at Nate Oates. What do you think about that, Brent?
I'll be honest with you. I differ with some folks about that. I think that he doesn't want to start a war between he and Nate Oates. So I think it was. Now, look, he's pretty calculated in everything he says. And I'm not trying to defend him here. I just didn't take it as that this was a slap at Nate Oates for what's happened. I think he was just making the point that you can't put yourself in a bad situation, particularly a few days before spring practice begins. And that's what Tony Mitchell did.
Are you in the market to buy or sell your home? Darlene Weeby, a realtor with Caldwell Banker, M. Parish, provide you with fast, friendly, reliable service. Call her today at 352-562-1411 to help your dreams come true. Speaking with Brent Beaird on the Titan More Hotline, second part of today's program will be Jake Hitt. Auburn Tigers. It's a big year for them with the hire of Hugh Freeze. What's going on the Plains?
Well, they're trying to kind of be able to figure it out too. There are a lot of eyes on the quarterback situation. Also, they do have a guy transferring, Cameron Brown, who's a linebacker. He's entering the transfer portal. Been there 4 years. So obviously he'll have a graduate. He's going to be a graduate player, graduate transfer. They like their quarterback room. Jarquez Hunter is one of the best backs in the league. Demario Austin. They got a transfer from South Florida, Brian Batty and Jeremiah Cobb. They'll be on the field. One thing I thought was interesting, and I'll contribute this to the Auburn media. Now, we know about TJ Finley, Robbie Ashford, Holden Grenner, that are already on the quarterback roster. There's some talk among the Auburn beat writers that they may actually go into the transfer portal in May if these guys don't pan out for spring practice. It's too early to know that, but I'm just throwing that out there, Shane, from the Auburn media. That I just thought that was interesting. You've got 3 quarterbacks now, and they may be going for a 4th.
Yeah, it's interesting, as you said. I was surprised that they didn't really get anybody in the off season, or not the off season, but during the signing period.
Yeah.
In the portal. So that is very possible. The Gators are back in action after spring break. They lost I don't know if he was an assistant or an analyst or something, to the Miami Hurricanes.
Yeah, Benedict Hippolyte, if I'm pronouncing that right, is accepted a position with Miami's coaching staff. I've got what I've seen is assistant running backs coach. So, and look, Shane and I are not being derogatory with him. I mean, it's just sometimes you've got a lot of guys who are, a lot of guys on the staffs for these teams, and some of them just they get better jobs. I get that, and that's kind of what's happened here. So hopefully he'll do well. with that. I think obviously the big news is Billy Gonzalez coming back. I know you've talked about that already, but I thought that was significant. He's a really good recruiter. That I think he did a good job with them before. Jaden Hill's coming back in the secondary. He's healthy. I think that's a good thing. And I still hear, Shane, I'm curious what you do, that Graham Mertz has been solid and that he has made routine plays, which is, I think, very important. So, of all the negativity that's going around about this program, I've heard more, and I had a friend that was there in the media, and he was impressed with what he saw over the last few days. And again, you're limited on what you can see, but I think you spent a better spring than maybe people realize.
Yeah, I think this team can fly under the radar. I really, really believe that. I know people think the schedule's really, really difficult. I can see a couple of tough games in there, but I think they can win 8 or 9 games. They got to set the tone when they go out to Utah on that Thursday night to kick off the season. But I think Graham Mertz is the kind of guy that they want, a solid guy that's going to do all the little things well. May not have the explosive plays here and there or the wild type plays, but I think he'll do just fine. The Georgia Bulldogs, they've had a lot of noise in the offseason with some issues. What's going on up there?
They were actually doing fine until they got one of their freshman tight end, Pierce Berlin. He broke his collarbone, had surgery, will be out for a couple of months. It's a rough injury, I'm sure. So that's unfortunate. I mean, look, they've still got a good tight end room with Oscar Delp, Brock Bowers, obviously, but they need some depth there. That's going to be interesting. Also, but I mean, other than that, I mean, they're getting used to Mike Bobo as a new offensive coordinator. That's going to be important. They've got some thin numbers at outside linebacker after Nolan Smith and Robert Beal went off the NFL. Marvin Jones and Jalen Walker are going to miss spring too for this and that. But they've recruited well. That's going to help them as it goes along. Again, they've got what I think. I mean, look, with their schedule, they'll be fine, especially early on. Ra Thomas from Mississippi State, Dominic Lovett from Missouri. Those guys are in practice with them, and they've been cleared. So a lot of people will have Georgia number one again. I do believe that.
I'm anxious to see, and I don't know if you've heard from any of your buddies that cover the dogs or the fan base. Are they concerned at all with Mike Bobo? I know Mike Bobo, he's a Georgia quarterback himself. He's called
Right.
plays there before, but Monken had a really good grasp of what these kids could and could not do, and they kind of opened up the playbook the last few years, and that's why they competed for a national title. If he gets back to being boring and predictable, what's the fan base going to be like? I'm anxious to see how that turns out. Anything going on with the Kentucky Wildcats?
I think they've got to be able to look, they've gotten some weapons. Their wide receivers, Dane King, Baron Brown, I think are good. And they both got speed. Liam Cohen, an offensive coordinator, I think is doing well. Two, they've obviously got to improve the offensive line. That's going to be key. Got to figure out who the running backs are going to be. Devin Leary is there, transfer from NC State. He had a pectoral injury. He's going to be okay. They're not going to have a spring game. They've got to replace the turf, and that's an issue. But overall, I think they're a little more optimistic than what they were last year. A disappointing year in a lot of ways, still. But from what I hear with spring, they are making progress.
The defending West champs, the LSU Tigers, have started. There's a lot of love for this team, Brent.
listen, there's so much love that they may be picked to win the West, frankly. So that, and look, Harold Perkins is back. Mason Smith is back. Remember, he blew his knee out in the opener with FSU. They have got just a bevy of talent. They've got two new transfers. Denver Harris from A&M, Deuce Chestnut from Syracuse at cornerback. That can make a difference. If people missed this last week, we mentioned LSU and Southern Cal are going to play in Las Vegas in 2024. That's a nice game. Frankly, John Emery Jr. running back's been suspended again. Man, he's a real talent when he's on the field, but you just got such a problem with him, academics and so forth. So hopefully he'll get some of that straightened out during this time too. But look, that it's funny you said that, because more people have brought that up recently. Is the optimism with LSU, and particularly bringing Jaden Daniels back, could be off the charts by the time we get to August.
At Chris Story Mortgage, they do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville and North Central Florida. Call Chris Story Mortgage today, 352-244-0840. A few more minutes with Brent Beaird on the Titan No More Hotline. All right, Ole Miss. I don't know if we talked about this in the last couple of weeks, but they hired Pete Golden, the former Alabama defensive coordinator.
Yes.
Obviously, do you think Pete was like, hey, man, I don't want to fire you? Nick probably said, I don't want to fire you, look for another job. Or I don't know what Ole Miss paid him. Do you think he just wanted to change the scenery?
Yes. And he will, I think what will help him too is he will have more say so in the personnel on defense. And he'll certainly, I think what will basically happen is that Lane Kiffin would just give him the defense and just say, hey, you've got priority here in making decisions. And that's something they need. Look, he did okay at Alabama, and as someone explained it to me, I thought they said it well. Said that Pete Golan wasn't necessarily the problem, but he also necessarily wasn't the answer. Mm-hmm. So hopefully he will do better at Ole Miss, where they really struggled. Now they've also got Charlie Weiss Jr. At offense coordinator, and Shane and I have talked now for weeks about the issue they've got at quarterback with Jackson Dart, Spencer Sanders, and Walker Howard. Now that's a nice problem, but as Shane said, one of those guys probably by May may be looking to go somewhere else, and I think that's an excellent point. So, but that's a team to really keep your eye on, Shane, particularly if they can make some improvement defensively.
Yes, indeed. The Tennessee Volunteers just started practice a couple of days, I think on Monday.
Yes.
Haven't heard a whole lot about the Vols. Obviously, they lose Hendon Hooker. It's a huge quarterback battle between Joe Milton and the $8 million. I call him the $8 million quarterback, Brent, whatever his deal is.
Yeah.
I'm anxious just to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, his name is Lama Leva, a five-star quarterback that they brought in. He's been there for a little while in the spring. Now, they've also, and this has kind of been in the works, it's been mentioned before, but NC State and Tennessee are going to play each other in 2024. That's in the Duke's Mayo Classic. Sound like a bowl game, doesn't it, Shane? Mm-hmm. September 7th of 2024 in Charlotte. Now, Tennessee was supposed to play Oklahoma that week, but the SEC has postponed that at this point. The biggest thing for Tennessee, again, is on defense. They were good on defense on first and second down, but on third down, man alive, they allowed 52% conversion rate. boy, that's rough in it, Shane. When you're allowing your opponent to get a first down 52% of the time. So I think it would be pretty safe to say, well, would it not? That would be a real priority for your spring.
Yeah, Tennessee's defense, I saw it in person. It was just god awful. Brent, before we get out of here, I know you got some nuggets to give us. What you got?
Well, we've always got nuggets and love to be able to do that. Texas A&M has started two. Bobby Petrino is in. So that's going to be help. They need some help at offensive tackle. Demetrius Crownover and Hunter Erb are a couple of guys. They may have the best receivers in the league. Evan Stewart, Anais Smith, Moose Muhammad, Tyron Smith. They got some other young guys coming in. That's going to be very interesting to see where that goes to. Now, obviously, FSU has been going on for a while at this point too. So, boy, they're really excited about playing Georgia Tech and Ireland next August 24th. They came out to, earlier this week and said more than 2,000 fans have already placed down payments for the game. More than 50 suite requests. So that, I think that's interesting. They're having a good spring overall. Winston Wright Jr., he got hurt in a car accident in Savannah, and now he's back. He's a transfer from West Virginia, and the media who've covered them have said this kid is as good as Johnny Wilson in the Pittman kid that got hurt, Micah Pittman. He's out for the spring too. So
recording in progress.
Pretty good spring for FSU. The spring game on April the 14th. Miami going on too. Tyler Van Dyke is back at quarterback. Ja'Cory Brown is there. They're pretty deep at running back, wide receiver. They're going to need some help. Shannon Dawson is their new offensive coordinator. So they're kind of all trying to figure it out together. So, but that's the fun thing about this time of year, Shane. Every time we talk, there's news from spring and camp and all that is going on too. Mississippi State started. They're trying to find a package for Mike Wright. Will Rogers is obviously the quarterback, but you need two quarterbacks in this league all the time, and that's going to be something that's going to be important. So, but all in all, Shane, we will keep our eyes on what's going on, and it's going to be a fun spring. The first spring game's coming up. Auburn's on the 8th, Vanderbilt's on the 8th, and then the rest of them are basically the next 2 weeks afterwards.
Yep, good stuff as always, Brent. We appreciate your time. Enjoy the Sweet 16, and we'll talk to you next week, my man.
Good, Shane. Always enjoy it, my friend. Take care.
That's Brent Beaird joining us on the Titan Tomorrow Hotline. Celebration points where the Gators go to celebrate. With premium brands like Nike International Endowment Center, Dave & Buster's, Palmetto Moon, Escape Apology, Visors, and the HBC's Restaurant Spurs Gridiron Grill. We'll see you at Celebration Point where the Gators go to celebrate. Going to take a quick time out. Come back. Jake Hitt will take over. You're watching and listening to Podup with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back. We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peaceland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Comfort Temp, comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise.
Campus USA Credit Union.
QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, and watch. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, Chris Doring Mortgage, Silverback Concrete Co., Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Doreen Wiebe, Realtor, Caldwell Banker, MM Parish. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, Aver and Smith, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Cube Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Pro football legend Emmitt Smith understands your joint pain.
It does not surprise me that there are a ton of people out there that's in pain.
That's why Emmitt is such a proponent of QC Kinetics, offering real lasting joint pain relief with non-surgical, all-natural biologic treatments.
Whether it's a joint pain, ankle pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, back pain, hip pain, any kind of pain, the body eventually will break down when it's under that much stress.
That stress can cloud your judgment to the point that you'll just say yes to the scalpel or yes to another prescription of pain pills. But maybe it's time for a second opinion from QC Kinetics.
The reason why I would recommend this is because the natural biologics that QC Kinetics is providing you gives your body a chance to naturally heal itself.
Restorative, regenerative solutions are here. Get lasting relief and live your life.
Call QC Kinetics 352-400-4550. That's 352-400-4550. QC Kinetics 352-400-4550.
Welcome in for another edition of Podup with Matthews in the morning, at least the second half of it. I am Jake Hitt. I'm joined by Cam Parker. He's a student at the University of Florida, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have his reporting chops in. He does a lot. He covers spring practice right now for Inside the Gators. And also he is the ESPN Gainesville Gator Baseball beat writer. So glad to have him in. Cam, how you doing?
It's early, but we're doing good. I'm not used to getting up. I'm a late bloomer in the morning, but we're doing good.
Hey, I feel the same way for you. So, I did want to ask you, you are all over the place, man. And I know it's hard for just the guys who cover multiple sports to do it for their job. I mean, how do you balance your schoolwork, going to spring practice, and then being at the ballpark for 3 hours at a time?
Very carefully. I also balance a part-time job. It can be rough some days, especially when, for example, you go to a football practice for 15 minutes and then you run over to the baseball stadium and there's a 3-hour rain delay, which happened for the Miami game. But I keep my schedule, write stuff down in a calendar. I make sure that no dates get in the way of anything. I try to line everything up, and some days I'm up at 5 a.m. for work. Other days I sleep in when I can, and I just grind the entire day, but just keep the schedule. Spring's a little rough you get spring football. You're in the tail end of basketball. They just lost the NIT, so that kind of alleviates the schedule a little bit, but then you go, I also split baseball duties too. So I'm not at every single game. So it helps out a little bit, but just try to keep a schedule and follow it and make sure that you know when dates are and when times are, so you don't have to be in two places at once.
Right. Talking about spring practice, I remember having Jacob Rudner on earlier a couple weeks ago when I hosted I asked him about his kind of observations. What are yours in the brief time that you've been able to see the Gators practice for spring?
The first big one that I've seen is, I guess, the three new coaches are probably the loudest ones out there, honestly.
Yeah.
Austin Armstrong's energy is something out of this world. He is the loudest dude on the field. He makes his presence known. He's jumping around, flying around with players. He's chaotic, but it seems like the good kind of chaos. Billy G has only been back for one practice. That was on Tuesday. There's an open practice again today, so I'll be back out there. But he, again, you see the veteranship with him. You kind of see that the players respect him even if they weren't with him in the past. And Russ Callaway, who's the new tight ends coach as well, a bit of a younger guy, was a defensive intern, now takes over for William Piegler. And again, just the good kind of loud, like not timid, not quiet, but not afraid to get onto his players. The one thing I've seen from all three of those guys is not afraid to make guys do drills again, especially Billy Gonzalez. That was something that didn't really see too much with Gary Colbert last year in the brief time that we got to see. But he's, again, just the little things, getting the little things right, whether it's on a drill, they're not swiping their hand on the ground, if they're not making the right cut, he's going to make you do it over. But as far as the players go, it's pretty easy to tell so far who's going to be a contributor early. In some spots, the offensive line is pretty much filled out. I'm not sure if you saw that or not, but it's from left to right. Austin Barber is going to be the left tackle. At left guard, it's going to be Micah Mazuka. Center, Kingsley Iguakin. Right guard, Richie Leonard. And then right tackle, it's kind of split between Keontae Goodwin and Damian George Jr., the two transfers. So that could change, obviously, from now to spring. But that so far is where it's lining up. And obviously, there's a few more positions as well that obviously are going to be filled. Running backs is filled. Quarterback, it's down to two. Really, Graham Mertz is going to be the starter. But a lot of holes on defense as well that, you know, we'll keep an eye out for those. But the roster's kind of coming together. But it's interesting so far. But it's very early on in spring too.
Right. And what do you think of that change for Austin Barber going from right tackle to left tackle?
Well, the good thing for him was last year, I kind of describe it as a swing tackle role. He wasn't, I guess, the starter. He was kind of the sixth man on that offensive line. And he didn't play much in the Utah game. And he really didn't start getting playing time until, I forget who it was in front of, and I think it was Michael Tarquin got hurt. He really didn't start to get play time on the field that much until Tarquin got hurt. And then the offensive line, I don't know if you want to say got better, but there wasn't a fall off. And so he kind of became that sixth guy where he didn't necessarily start, but, you know, he would go in for a drive at either tackle spot. They kind of moved around Richard Garage as well, but he has experience at both. And he's, you know, I wouldn't be surprised to see if he's the best Gators offensive lineman this year, even with Mazuka, who is one of the top guards in the country last year. Obviously, Iguakin is one of the most senior centers in the country, but Austin Barber was fantastic in any role that he had last year. So I don't think it's going to be too much of a transition for him, considering he kind of played both spots last year, even though it was mostly right tackle. But, you know, he's looked fine in brief times that we got to see him. You can tell he's a veteran, but he should be fine in that left tackle spot.
And who's a player that you've really enjoyed at least being able to talk to in these spring sessions post-practice?
A good one, we had the most recent one we had, it was Chris McClellan and Miguel Mitchell. Both were pretty good. And again, a lot of that has to do with, it was their first time speaking with the media. Obviously, freshmen don't speak with the media, but now they're sophomores, so we get to talk to them a lot more. And it was really good hearing from them, mostly from Mitchell, because he went from kind of a special teamer backup didn't play all too much necessarily. Got on the field in every game, but it was like for one or two plays, maybe it wasn't too much. But he's going to be a starter at safety. Like he goes from that and he's going to be the starter at safety after Rashad Torrance and Trey Dean are off to the NFL and you have 3 or 4 guys transfer out of the program. So he goes from fighting for, backup spot and playing time to being the starter. So it was interesting to hear from him. Add to it that Corey Raymond is now coaching the entire secondaries after you had Patrick Toney go off to the NFL. So it's kind of good to hear from him. And he also, I learned this too, knows Austin Armstrong outside of UF. He was recruited by Armstrong when Armstrong was the defensive coordinator at Southern Miss. So there's not really a drop off there as far as a relationship or knowledge of the defense, because Armstrong's not changing too much. But it was good to hear from him and just what he had to say about last year, and just explaining that, he's going into the starting spot, taking what he learned from Dean and Torrance last year, kind of wanted to expand his role a little bit, but he likes the aspects that Armstrong brings to the defense, blitzing, aggressiveness, going after the football, not waiting back. So it's going to be interesting, but he's also a player that I'm keeping an eye on just because he goes from special teamers back up at the star position. Now he's going to start at safety opposite Kamari Wilson. So it should be interesting for him too.
Right. And I wanted to ask, or I want to tell you about Peachland Dentistry really quick, Cam. Peachland Dentistry is Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Visit them at peachlanddental.com and join the show tomorrow for Peachland Dentistry JC and QB weekend picks. So I did have a question. I don't know if you know it, Cam, but they're asking what the format is. Have you gotten any information on that for the spring game yet?
So last season, if I'm not mistaken, they tried to split up the 1s and 2s evenly as much as possible. I imagine that's going to be the same just because Billy Napier, he has his system, he has his way of doing things. He doesn't change that. So if I had to guess, that would be the format. He may want to change things, but that was the format last year. That's probably going to be the format this year. Dan Mullen was famous for doing 1s and 2s, but we could see, again, never truly know until those rosters come out. They usually release them towards the tail end of spring practice, and we're only in week 2. Of course, 4 weeks in spring practice, so we'll see. I think it's going to be, we're going to try to split it up as evenly as possible. Obviously it's going to be split up with Graham Mertz is going to be the quarterback of one team. Jack Miller is going to be the quarterback of the other team. Trevor Etienne is going to be the running back of one team. Montrell Johnson is going to be the running back of the other team. So they're going to kind of split it up that way. It would make sense to do that. The only position groups I could see them potentially not splitting up would be like offensive line, defensive line, things like that, because that's the cohesive unit. You kind of want those guys to play together to get a feel for it. But who knows, they may even switch that up as well. But I think it's going to be split. Try to split it up as evenly as possible. Make it a good game and try to get everyone on the field, because it's only a spring game. You want to get everyone experience and just get them on the field and give a show for the fans.
Right. And you mentioned Graham Mertz and Jack Miller. What's been your take on that quarterback battle so far?
So it's interesting. Brent kind of talked about what he's heard as well, and it's pretty much the same thing that Graham Mertz, he's the starter right now. We only get about 15 minutes, and of course, we only get 15 minutes to watch practice that's on air. So, we get to watch 15 minutes of Graham Mertz throwing corner routes, slant routes, out routes. Nothing too spectacular, but again, nothing necessarily too concerning from what I've heard. Again, he's learning a new playbook. He's coming off of a interesting, I guess would be the word, tenure at Wisconsin. So, obviously some growing pains just with learning a new offensive system and getting acclimated, but that's also what spring's for. So it's not necessarily any panics just yet, but he came to start. He didn't he didn't transfer over to be the backup. And I think Napier made that pretty clear. And again, just taking on that leadership role, being more of a vocal leader. I think it was Austin Barber mentioned stuff about how, when he arrives, Graham Mertz's car is already there. And when he leaves, Graham Mertz's car is still there. So he's usually the first one in, last person out. And that's what you want out of quarterback, veteran leadership, a guy who knows the ropes. Even if he's a new guy on campus, he needs to be the face of the offense and the leader of the group. So he's been doing a good job with that so far. And again, Florida doesn't need an Anthony Richardson type to win football games. As crazy as that sounds, if Graham Mertz can just be a good system quarterback to where obviously he knows the offense, but he can make the easy throws to the receivers and they can rely on the run game, as Shane said in the first half, this could be a 9-win season for Florida. I don't think it'll be a 9-win season. Right now I'm still leaning towards that 6-win type, but Graham Mertz, he's showing a lot of good things in the brief time that we see. The spring game will give us more knowledge, obviously.
Yeah, I wanted to. You mentioned the run game. I read a little thing from Matt Baker today about the evolution of Trevor Etienne as a running back, and it was funny when they said that the game that clicked for him was not one of the games where he broke off a big run or had this big stat line. It was the Vanderbilt game because that was his best day as a pass blocker.
And again, it's ironic that you say that because that was probably the worst rushing game that they had all year. Like nothing was clicking on the offensive line, and I know we kind of joked, like just in general, some Gator fans that I know and some of the other Inside the Gators guys kind of joked that if Anthony Richardson was throwing for 450 yards, Florida wasn't going to win the game because that's not what their strength was. And Florida, it was just an awful rushing game, but I kind of remember that game and I was like, Montreal Johnson and Trevor Etienne did have good games pass blocking. And I did a feature story on him in January. I spoke to his mother about him and Travis and their dynamic growing up. And that was kind of what the story was about. And obviously one of the things I asked was, what did Travis teach Trevor? I mean, there's, good gap in age. Travis was one of the best running backs in ACC history. What did he learn from Trevor? And, she said the biggest thing that he taught him and we pushed with Trevor was pass blocking. And again, Trevor kind of talked about it in his lone press availability that in high school, running the ball is not necessarily an issue.
Right.
He said they're in the wing T formation. They hand it off, hit the gap, go. And he's obviously shown that he has speed, agility, and he can do all that stuff. But the pass blocking wasn't a big factor in high school. So he had to kind of learn off to the side, outside of Jennings High School and get that in. And then when he came to Florida, that was a big focus with him and Jabbar Jalouk, that it was still a big transition for him. And he got better with that as the season progressed. And again, more experience means you should get better. But that was an interesting thing too that I heard, because I was assuming that he was going to say, the FSU game, he had a couple big runs. Obviously against South Carolina, he had the 85-yard touchdown. He had a lot of big plays this season, but I also thought it was interesting that he said that he felt that he turned a corner in that Vanderbilt game.
Right. And you see that in the NFL a lot. Guys that necessarily are really good running backs, really good kind of pretty good pass catchers, and then they go out of the game and they're like, why are they taking one of the best players of the game? It's because they can't pass block. I remember the same thing happened with Myles Gaskin in Miami. So let me tell you one real quick about QC Kinetics. If you've got joint pain in your knees, shoulders, hip, or back that won't go away, Cam, I don't know if that's going to happen to you. You're like 22 years old.
Hey, my back hurts sitting in this chair, so we may be there.
you need to check out QC Kinetics, long-lasting relief, not surgery, drugs, or downtime. Schedule your free consultation at QC Kinetics with locations in Ocala and now open in Gainesville, 352-400-4550. I got about 10 minutes here left. We're joined by Cam Parker from ESPN Gainesville, also works for Inside the Gators, staff writer. Cam, I want to go into your beat with ESPN Gainesville, the Gator baseball beat. Gators had their first real road test outside of non-conference coming this weekend. How do you feel they stack up against Ole Miss?
Well, that Alabama series was a big indicator of truly where this team was. Obviously we knew that this could be a great baseball team, not just a good baseball team, but one of the best in the country. Early in the season, the concern obviously was the relief pitching. The starters weren't necessarily having any issues, but when that middle relief came in, things tended to fall apart. Especially in the fifth, sixth innings. That was the joke that Florida's going to blow a lead in the fifth inning. But even then, that's kind of slowed down a little bit. Between the Alabama series, the game against FSU the other night. Philip Abner's been pitching tremendously. He's been fantastic in his spot. They're finding their identity with that. And the Alabama test, it was really a strong showing of where this team was. Proving that they are one of the best teams in the country. They moved them up to number 3. The FSU series, of course, a big comeback win, and just in that game. So again, it's going to be interesting to see if they can carry that over. Again, very early in SEC play. But Tyler Shelnut mentioned this after, I think it was Siena, the game 1. They won only 3-2. There was a rain delay and the team was just off. He mentioned that they have a massive target on their back and they can't afford to take any days off with that target on their back. So it's going to be interesting just going forward. They've played a season of a first half of the season. It's been a long first half just with, everything going on with Wyatt Langford getting hurt, with, struggling relief pitching, but the best bats in the country. So it's going to be a big test going forward this weekend. To see if they can keep that up. But one guy to keep an eye on, obviously, is Josh Rivera. He has been absolutely raking the last few games, really stepping into it and kind of embracing his role as a hitter, but taking advantage of his opportunity, because he wasn't a great hitter the last 3 years. He really just wasn't. He was an okay hitter, but he wasn't, anything special. And I saw Nick Delatorre tweeted out that he may not be the best bat on the team, but he's, probably the identity of the team. Guys like him and BT. So it's keep an eye on him. Obviously, if he can carry that over, obviously you expect guys like Jack Caglione to just continue having good games in and out. But, guys like Rivera, Cade Kurland, and I didn't know this before I joined, but Cade Kurland is supposed to be a senior in high school, and he's becoming one of the best hitters on the team. Absolutely insane.
He's got the Judd Fabian thing going on.
Yeah, he graduated high school early. Why not go play some baseball at the University of Florida? And he's been kicking butt. I mean, there's just no like that. It is what it is. He's just been kicking butt, as a really a high school senior playing Division I baseball. So again, I'd say this is kind of part B of the test, if you will. To see just truly where this team is. It's so early in SEC play. So it'll be interesting, but good things were shown in that Alabama series and in that FSU game the other night. But we'll see if they can carry it over and start to make it a consistent thing, because that'll be extremely important going forward.
Right. And, they've played a lot of games at home. Not many of their series have been on the road. The big Miami series, they got that at home this year after going on the road last year. So this will be out, like I said, outside of going to Florida State on Tuesday, this will be their biggest test of the season.
And I think they played UNF. They played they split that series. The game that they won was also away, but outside of that, they've maybe played one more. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but this is the first true road series. And again, you can't take those lightly in the SEC. But again, they showed a lot of positive things on the road in Tallahassee. No, they're down 5-1. The bats just aren't working. And in the second half, which is traditionally this season where Florida has struggled the most. Pitching comes in and just shuts down FSU, and the bats come alive. And then that 8th inning, they popped off. I mean,
Right.
that was some of the best baseball that they've played this entire season in that second half of the game. So a lot of positive coming off of, again, that Alabama series and in Tallahassee last night, but the first true road test this season. So we'll see how they do away from home, and see if they can take another series.
Right. And let me tell you real quick, Cam, give you the day in sports history. That's our usual segment on the show, brought to you by Comfort Temp. 1968, the 30th NCAA National Championship in men's basketball. UCLA beats North Carolina 78-55. Bruins win back-to-back titles, and Lou Alcindor, later to be known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, most outstanding player for the second of 3 straight tournaments. So this is his second consecutive, going on to 3 for 1969.
You don't get players like that anymore. It's usually the one and dones. That's
right.
Good stat.
It's just whenever I read anything about UCLA from the 60s to like the 70s, it is always the most mind-boggling thing.
When I read it's just insane basketball. Again, obviously we weren't alive, so we can't say I saw this, but again, just looking back and reading on that stuff, man, those John Wooden teams, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor teams, they just were insane. Just insane basketball being played over there.
Right, exactly. And I'll tell you about Comfort Temp. Comfort is our business. Peace of mind is our promise. Beat the summer heat and schedule your air conditioners tune up today, keeping you chill and the Florida heat far away. Comfort Temp Heating and Air. Call them today at 352-376-2366. So, Cam, who are you really surprised to see kind of break out this season on the baseball team? I would probably think it'd be Philip Abner. Because of the.
I would say Abner too, because he struggled at the beginning of the year too. It wasn't like where Cade Curlin kind of started off strong. The initial answer would probably be Cade Curlin, just seeing his age and the fact that he's supposed to be a high school senior right now and the way he's playing. Some could argue Josh Rivera because of the way he's hitting after years of kind of struggling with that. But I would, with his last 2 outings, Philip Abner is, the one that I'd probably pick. He just face it, he just wasn't good early in the season. And that wasn't just him. That whole middle relief just was not good. But he really turned a corner in the last few games, and he's just been fantastic. I believe, get what game it was, but it was one of the games that I covered. He came in and he shut things down. He's been just fantastic the last few games. So I would say Abner as well.
It was kind of crazy with when they played Florida Atlantic. Nolan Shanuel, who's going to be a big time draft pick. He's got 2 or 3 home runs on the night, and they call on Abner, and he just gets him on like 3 pitches.
So he had 3 home runs in that game. I think, forget how many RBIs, but I remember that game too because Josh Rivera had a fantastic game. It was kind of back and forth in that aspect. And Philip Abner comes in, and your first thought is, oh boy, here we
MLB
go.
Draft pick.
And he shut them down. He 3 outs right away, and Florida won. And from that game on, you could just see that he's really broke out of his shell in a sense. I know he's returning guy and considered a vet in that aspect, but he's really broken out of his shell and just shut things down when he comes in. And that's what you want. They hadn't had an identity at the relief pitcher. Their middle or their weekend starters were set. There were no problems with Sproat, Waldrip, and Caglione. Maybe an inning or 2 where they struggled, but it was consistently where they were getting 7, 8, 9 strikeouts in their outings. Even midweek starting, it wasn't as good, but they didn't have really any glaring issues. But that middle relief just hadn't had an identity between Abner, Figueroa, Fisher, Jameson. They were just struggling, and Abner really has taken the lead on that and turned that corner. And you kind of see that with the other guys as well, where they're just, they're not maybe playing top 3 in the country type pitching with baseball, but they're turning a corner and they're playing a lot better. And it's good to see that this early in SEC play.
Right.
You kind of want to get those struggles out of the way, obviously, and then can improve as the season goes on. So the fact that they got it out of their system and then won a series against Alabama and then came in and shut FSU down, and now they've, they still got the whole season in front of them pretty much. That's a big sign. But I would go with Abner.
Yeah. So, I mean, just